Happy Hour Friday starts right now here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, and of course, live video on our YouTube channel. Just search 97.3 ESPN through the YouTube channel, and you will get live video of the Sports Bash. What is happening, my friends? It's good to have you with us on a Friday show as we love the Happy Hour Friday. We've reached the end of the week, and obviously, we've got so much to dive into, including the Sixers win again last night. But there's new news in the Ben Simmons saga. No, he has not been traded, but he has been fined again. I'll get you the latest coming up here on the Sports Bash Live. Paul Hudrick today with the latest on that at 3:40 today on the Sports Bash. Paul will be here. And, of course, we get ready for the Eagles and the Chargers. A lot of thoughts on that game as we get ready for the weekend. Week 9 in the NFL happened last night, started Thursday night with the Jets doing what the Jets do. They lost, and obviously the Colts with the win last night in kind of impressive fashion, I guess you will. Was that impressive? Would you deem with beating the Jets? It's like when the Eagles beat the Lions, it's just like, well, it's just the Lions. It's almost like in the NFL, you could say that about everybody. You know, hey, they beat the Falcons. Well, it's just the Falcons. Well, they beat Carolina. Well, it's just Carolina. Everybody's got an excuse when a team wins. When anybody loses, it's your team stinks. When you beat somebody, the other team stinks. No one's actually any good in the league, right? There's no good teams. Everyone just stinks. So when you beat someone, it doesn't matter because the other team stinks. And when you lose, you stink. Well, last night the Colts won. Are they any good? I don't know. Probably not. They beat the Jets. Well, it's just the Jets. And the Jets aren't very good. Are the Colts any good? I don't know. They're 4-5. They win last night, which keeps them in the playoff crosshairs, if you will. The Jets are essentially the Eagles, but on the other side. Like, they're 4-5. People don't really believe in them because of the quarterback situation. They really haven't beaten anybody of any substance. You know, the Jets, the Colts this year have wins against Miami, who has 1 win, Houston, who has 1 win, the Jets, who has 2 wins, and the 49ers, who have 3 wins. They have lost to the Seahawks when they had Russell Wilson. They lost to the Rams, they lost to the Titans, and they lost to the Titans again. So anytime the Colts have played someone good, and they lost to the Ravens. So anytime the Colts have played somebody good, they lost. Anytime they've played somebody bad, they've won. That's the NFL. And that's why everybody's right about the same record. Everybody's about 4 wins, 5 wins, 3 wins. There's not a whole heck of a lot of separation in the NFL, and you saw it last night. The Jets and the Colts, it was an awful game. 45-30 was the game last night. 75 points were put on the board last night on a third. Remember when Thursday night football games hit the under like all the time? They were always sloppy. They were just like these terribly played games because the players just weren't ready. How about the Jets? I have a new theory for the Jets quarterback situation. Just spin the wheel and pick a guy. You know, Mike White plays 405 yards. He starts last night. He gets hurt. Let's put Josh Johnson in, and he throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, just let anybody else play quarterback. They traded for Joe Flacco, and somehow he didn't get into the game last night. You gave a draft pick up to get Joe Flacco, and he's not even dressed for the Jets last night. I mean, Joe Douglas. I thought this Joe Douglas was some sort of genius. From all the Eagles fans out there, Joe Douglas is a football guy, and he knows what he's doing. He trades for Joe Flacco and then doesn't dress him last night. What a great decision. It's a great decision. Let's trade a draft pick for a guy with no intention of actually playing him. Jeez. The Jets are just a disaster of an organization. And it was on full display last night. I mean, they got smoked by Indianapolis, who's just, as I said, it's funny. When you look, I read the Indianapolis schedule. I said, they're the Eagles. Anybody who's bad, they've beaten. Anybody who's good, they've lost to. But Indianapolis is in the playoff mix. In fact, I think if you look at the standings right now in the AFC, they're 4-5. This is where the 7th playoff team is just ridiculous. Indianapolis at 4-5 is in the 12th spot. Philadelphia at 3-5. They're in the 11th spot. And all those teams are in play. The 5th team in the AFC playoffs is Cincinnati. They're 5-3. The next wild card team is Pittsburgh. They're 4-3. And the Chargers, who are the 7th seed currently, They are 4-3. New England's next at 4-4. Kansas City is 4-4. Cleveland is 4-4. Denver is 4-4. And Indianapolis is 4-5. So if you're an Indianapolis fan, are you having the same conversation that we're having here? Like, no, the team stinks. They haven't beaten anybody. Yeah, they've only beaten the Jets. I told you, they've beaten the Jets, Miami, Houston. It's horrible. I mean, they haven't beaten a good team, period. Every time they played somebody good, they've lost. But guess what? I've told you guys for years, this isn't college football. There is no rankings. There are nobody voting on how you looked in the game against this team or that team. If you win, that's all that matters. It's a win. So at the end of the day, if the Colts somehow pile up 9 or 10 wins against whoever it may be, that might be good enough to get them into the playoffs. That's the same story with Philadelphia. I'm not sitting here telling you that the Colts are any good. They've beaten 4 rotten teams. Philadelphia, they've beaten 3 rotten teams. And if they are to keep winning every single week, the answer will be the same. Well, they only beat the Giants. Well, they only beat the Jets. Well, they only beat Washington. They only beat the Giants again. Well, they only beat Washington again. Well, guess what? That is who showed up on this team's schedule. And it doesn't matter. They don't give you a half a win for beating a bad team. You get the full win. It's not like hockey. If you get to overtime, you only get 1 point guaranteed instead of 2. If you win a game in the NFL, it's a full win. And I'm telling you, watching this league as much as I am, and as much as we all do, the one thing we all know about the NFL is we don't know anything. The only thing we do know about the NFL is you never know what's going to happen. The only thing we do know about the NFL is at the end of the day, there is going to be a lump of teams, some of which are going to win games they're not supposed to win, lose games you didn't expect them to. And what's going to happen? You're going to have about 4 or 5 teams when the final week of the season comes that are all going to be playing for one playoff spot. That is what's going to happen this year. Because of the unpredictable nature of the NFL, you will have an AFC. This is what the NFL wanted. They have created this where the final weekend of the year in the AFC, you will have 3 playoff berths up for grabs. And in the NFC, you will have at least 1 playoff berth that is still up for grabs because everybody is so mediocre.
Mike, remember we talked about a couple of days ago about the whole college football playoff with Cincinnati? About why are they here? Why are they there? You can only play who's in front of you. It's not Cincinnati's fault that they play in the conference they're in. So it's not the Eagles' fault or the Colts' fault that they have a easier strength of schedule than fill-in-the-blank team. So isn't your job to win games? Mm-hmm. So you go out and beat the team that's in front of you.
Well, here's the thing. In the NFL, like in other sports, you are constantly kind of building towards something. You know, you're in the NBA, you get a young player, you're really bad, you get a young player, and you're hoping that over time that young player develops and players around him develop, that you go from a team that makes the playoffs to winning the playoff series.
Keyword hoping.
Right. In the NFL, now keep in mind, in the NBA, baseball, hockey, you essentially play the same schedule every single year.
Yes.
If you're the Sixers, you're going to play your Atlantic Division teams, 4 times? You're going to play the teams in the
Conference
Eastern Conference
twice.
You're going to play the Western Conference twice. The schedule never changes. Same with baseball. You're playing the NL East teams 18 times. You play the Central teams, the West teams, whatever it is, 2 series each, 1 on the road, 1 at home, and then an interleague play.
Right.
That schedule does not change. The NFL, it's a not only week-to-week league, it's also a year-to-year league. What you did one year does not carry over to what you are the next year because your schedule is X in 2020. Your schedule is now changed in 2021. You now have a completely different set of teams that you will face because you may have won 10 games based on the fact that, hey, our schedule gave us the NFC East last year. So if you were the division that got matched up with the NFC East, that might suggest that your team is better than you thought it was entering the league. Why? Well, you got 4 games last year against teams that were not very good. So the NFL is not this manifesto of building a team from year to year to year to year until you grow together as a team with this one player, and you hope that, you make the playoffs, you lose, you get to the next round, and like that climb. The NFL is so year to year because of the nature of the scheduling that it is really difficult to kind of see where your franchise sits.
And don't forget, Mosher and you talked about this on Wednesday with the fact that, in the past, if you made the playoffs, it was a sign that you're growing. Now look at the Dolphins. Look at these other teams that played well last year, and now they're getting completely smashed. So, as you just said, you can't act like it's a continual growth, because unless your roster is really good, then you're probably going to have a down year or a down point because of your schedule.
Right. The schedule part of the NFL is such a great equalizer to keep everybody constantly thinking that they have a shot. Because think about it. Last year, the Miami Dolphins, for instance, who had a good season, right? They won 10 games last year, the Miami Dolphins. They won 10 games, and now they're 1-7. How do you go from a 10-win team to a team right now that is on the precipice of the number one overall pick in the league? Well, you take a look at their schedule last year, and you're like, well, the teams that they played, the division crossover games that they played, and the last place nature of their schedule, right, changes the dynamic. Well, last year, because they won 10 games, well, now their schedule this year has changed. The 2 extra games they have, well, they're against better teams. The divisions that they play this year are more competitive than the divisions they got stuck playing last year. So all of a sudden, the Dolphins go from a 10-win team that looked like they're on the way up to this dumpster fire of a team that you're like, what the heck happened to them?
And don't forget about the fact that, in the NFL, we mentioned the schedule is the equalizer. The schedule also, it what it does is it makes you question everything every week. We just saw the Jets beat the Bengals, okay? And now the Jets look horrible against the Colts. So which team are the Jets? Well, the Jets are probably the team that looks horrible against the Colts, and that the Bengals game is an anomaly because every team has an anomaly or two during the season. This is why college football, it's make or break every week, because you have to go perfect through a season to get to a big bowl game of the playoffs. In the NFL, you can have that bad game once or twice and still go on to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I feel like people don't really, you look at, you brought up, who was the other team? The Bears. The Bears made the playoffs last year, right?
Yep.
They were a playoff team last year. The
Yes,
Chicago Bears made the playoffs. Nobody would suggest that the Chicago Bears are very good or were very good last year.
I certainly hope they would.
No. But at the end of the day, how'd they make the playoffs? Well, they went 8-8. Well, they're very mediocre. Them making the playoffs isn't this statement of that they're this great franchise and they were a playoff team. For God's sakes, there was a stretch of time where they lost 6 straight games last year. The Bears were 5-1 at one point, and then they were 5-7, and they finished the year at 8-8. Well, they were a byproduct of playing the schedule last year, which was whatever, the schedule they played. This year, now you're 8-8, you made the playoffs, you're hoping that you take that step in the right direction. They had the number 2, where did Fields get picked? 4?
I think it was actually 12, but.
Oh, no, I'm thinking of Lance. My bad.
Lance was 3.
Right. I'm thinking of San Francisco, who got an abnormally high pick.
Well, both teams traded up to get those guys.
Right. So Fields, you made the playoffs, you get the new quarterback. There's a lot of positive vibes, but all of a sudden you're in this situation where the schedule that you played last year, you're not repeating that schedule. So whatever you were last year, 8-8. You are playing what? So you play your division teams. So you got 3 division teams that
you
you're
get the
playing.
6 games in
so
your
you
division.
have 6 games. There is now 11 games that were not potentially on your. You have 11 games that were different from what you had the year before.
Correct.
So I was thinking about how football, it is not this year-to-year building and growth anymore. Because you might have had a roster that was built in 2020 that was matchup styles make fights.
Yes.
The roster that you had in 2020 may have been built well for the 16 teams that you had in 2020. You might have that same roster construction or a similar roster construction. The problem is you have 11 new style of fighters that you are now getting ready to battle. It would be like a boxer boxing the same guy for a full year and knocking him out every single time, and then fighting a completely different boxer the following year and using the same technique to try to beat a different technique fighter. And then that guy getting knocked out and saying, well, you knocked out this other guy every single time you fought last year. Why, when you fought this one guy, did you get beat? Well, my roster stayed the same. It was conducive to that guy's style. And now this guy is completely different from the style that I brought on that guy, and I got caught. The roster construction of the NFL is constantly evolving. It's constantly changing. And I think the great equalizer in the NFL that keeps everything together, keeps all these teams, and the truly, really good organizations, and this is where you got to give the Eagles credit, have found ways to constantly keep winning and constantly keep evolving, even when your schedule changes and the roster changes and the style of play changes.
And the season changes, Mike.
And the season changes. Every single year is a new time capsule. It is not like, hey, we were good last year, so we're going to be good again this year. Look at the Chiefs. They've been good for a couple of years. Well, they've had schedules that have worked for them. They've had good rosters, not questioning their roster, but now they've gone in with the same type of roster for 4 straight years. And people are saying, well, I've seen your roster for 4 years. We're starting to kind of figure out what you're doing. You haven't had good linebackers. You haven't done this.
You've had massive changeover on the offensive line. Don't forget, when they won the Super Bowl, that was one offensive line. All 5 starters right now in Kansas City are completely different from that team.
Right. Now, Colin LBI asked the magic question. This is a good question. And you can throw in your thoughts on what I'm talking about at 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Colin LBI texts in, so a soft schedule makes you think you're better than you actually are. What does that say about the Eagles having the easiest schedule the rest of the season, whether they have a winning record or not? It is a fair question because, look, Washington won the division last year based on the fact that they had the last place schedule from the previous season. No one suggested, though, that Washington was some Super Bowl contender entering this season. They were a byproduct of their schedule. So the question becomes, did they do enough in the offseason to recognize, hey, we made the playoffs because we won the division on the last place schedule. We need to still make some massive changes. Or did they look at that and say, hey, we're on the way up. Let's just keep doing what we're doing. And I think so many teams get stuck in this. We're on the way up. Let's just keep doing what we're doing, and we're going to grow. Can't do that because now Washington has a first place schedule, and now they're not reaping the benefits of not being able to have a very good roster. They don't have a good roster. That's their problem. They don't have a good roster, and therefore you can't sneak out a couple of wins here and there against bad teams. Philadelphia, who doesn't have a good roster from 53, they can sneak out a couple of wins here and there because they're not playing a very difficult schedule.
But also don't forget about the fact that, and this is something that we've talked about, you and I have gone back and forth about before, some of these teams, like Washington, fall into this trap. They say, well, we made the postseason. We're going in the right direction. Because sometimes making the playoffs covers up for the fact that you need to make more changes.
I got to imagine, though, Josh, like, look, I coach on a very low level, right? 13-year-old kids. So I'm not comparing, but I know in my own mental head, hey, we beat this team, and this team, but we're still deficient here, and there. We're just playing teams that just aren't capable of beating us. If I can recognize that on the level that I'm coaching, I have to imagine a front office can say, hey, we're winning some games, but we're really not where we want to be.
But see, here's the difference, though. From year to year, you're a little bit like a high school and a college team. You have turnover. Every year, kids are leaving, right? In the NFL or in professional sports, everyone isn't automatically leaving. So sometimes you can find, for lack of a better term, excuses or hyper-rationalizations for certain things because I drafted this guy or I gave this guy a contract or I like this guy. I mean, how many times did they bring back Jason Peters because him and the owner were friends?
Croce texts in, Mike, good point that no one thinks about with NFL competition. How about the Sixers? They only beat the Pistons. Well, they beat the Pistons twice already. They beat the Bulls.
And they beat the Pistons and the Bulls shorthanded.
Well, right. And they beat Portland. I mean, the Sixers are another but they have 82 games of evening things out. In the NFL, you don't have 82 games to kind of figure out, are we good? Are we not good?
You technically only have 11 games because you have 6 games in your division. And those divisions, sometimes they just end up being 1-1 through the division with each team.
It's definitely, I think, something that doesn't get discussed and thought about a lot is the nature of the NFL is so year to year because of the roster, because of the schedule configuration. Sports Bash is brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan, now open, Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot. Online, mattblattnissan.com. Mike McGarry's here today for these weekend thoughts. Sal Paolantonio for a Sal Pal Friday. Paul Hudrick on the Sixers, and the latest, Ben Simmons is fined again. We got the details over at 973ESPN.com. I want to discuss that a little bit later on as well. Plus Adam Kaplan, Happy Hour Friday, and Casey Joyner, Jeff Kerr. We are just getting started, and I have 2 more chances for you to qualify for 99 bottles. Listen for your shot coming up at 2:55 today. It's your first chance to enter this year's 99 bottles party. I'm Mike Gill, and this is a Happy Hour Friday edition of the Sports Bash. Watch it live, streaming video on our YouTube channel. 227 Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. I'm at Mike Gill Show on Twitter. You can follow me over there. Watch the show live, streaming video on our YouTube channel. Search 973 ESPN. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You get the show sent to you each and every day. Download the free mobile app, and you can message us through the phone. We've got another chance for you to qualify for this year's 99 bottles coming up at 2:55 today. We'll have 3 more people register, and that will get you a shot at Eagles Washington club box seats. It will also get you a shot for Sixers tickets, Flyers tickets, and more. Listen at 2:55 today for that contest sounder to go off, and you could be a part of this year's 99 bottles at Vagabond Kitchen and Tap House, which is happening Wednesday, November 24th in EHT. Listen at 2:55 and 4:55 today to get in. I am Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Sixers won last night, and somebody mentioned that about the Sixers and their schedule. The Sixers' schedule has been kind of a soft schedule, but hey, the difference in the NBA, if you want to be a high-seeded team, which is imperative. I know the Sixers were the 1 seed last year and got knocked out, but you will take your chances on being the number 1 seed multiple times over trying to play from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th spot. I guarantee you that. If you're the number 1 seed a variety of times, 1 of those, 2 of those, 3 of those times, you are going to make it to the NBA Finals because that shows the consistency that you have a good team. Different in the NFL. Because you're playing the same schedule. How do you get those seedings? You need to beat the bad teams. And the Sixers are beating bad teams right now shorthanded. And that is an impressive trait. Here's the problem. I don't know that the Sixers have pulled the wool over anybody's eyes or taken the wool off of anybody's eyes yet to make them believe that this group is capable of winning a 7-game series against the very best teams in the league. And who are those very best teams? Well, right now, the Sixers are the number 1 seed in the East. We're 9 games in, not a big deal. Miami's next. Chicago, who they've already beaten, is 3rd. Brooklyn, who they lost to. Like, imagine if Philly was beating Brooklyn. They kind of blew that game. They would be 8-1 right now and have beaten Brooklyn and Chicago, 2 teams that are doing well in the standings. They beat the Knicks. Now they've beaten Detroit twice, who was 1-7. But here's the thing with the Sixers. I'm not buying into them as a championship team until this Ben Simmons thing is resolved. Until the Ben Simmons thing gets some sort of resolution, the only thing I can ask of them is to just keep pocketing wins. Just keep stashing them. Piling them up and keep stashing them because I cannot get a feel on the team one way or the other. The only thing I can say is, yeah, they're deeper. I mean, a full deck of cards for the Philadelphia 76ers as currently constructed would be Ben Simmons back, Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, and then I don't know what they would do at the other 2 spots. Would Danny Green start? Do you go with Matisse Thybulle? Do you play Maxey next to Ben Simmons? Do you play Shake Milton next to Ben Simmons? Right now, that team is not good enough in my mind. Unless Ben Simmons comes back and he is a completely changed player. And I don't say completely, just has developed and evolved his offensive game to the point where he is not historically bad from the free throw line. I mean, what separated the Sixers from making the Eastern Conference Finals last year was essentially Ben Simmons not shooting 60. If Ben Simmons shot 60% from the free throw line, which is essentially his regular season average, they would have swept the Atlanta Hawks last year. So let's not act like, wow, they lost to the Hawks. They had a historic thing happen. Now, that being said, I don't know that they're beating the Bucks. I'm pretty sure in my mind they weren't going to beat the Bucks. So anything short of Ben Simmons returning and having some evolution in his game, this team is currently constructed is deeper, but are they good enough? And I don't know right now. I would have to say probably not, because deeper, fine. It's helping them win regular season games shorthanded. Being deeper is helping them beat the Pistons. Being deeper is helping them beat the Bulls. Being a deeper team is helping them win regular season games that they have to pile up. But it's not going to help them win a playoff series. That's the difference. And then the news on the Sixers today, they have fined Ben Simmons $360,000 for missing the game against the Pistons. And now they have changed their tune. The Sixers, that is, plan to continue to fine Ben Simmons until he cooperates with the team and their physicians on his mental health and fulfills other basketball-related obligations. That, according to Woj. So we're right back to square one, where the team is saying, you're not listening, you're not showing up, you're not just going to get a paycheck, we're going to start fining you, and that escrow is why we have that money in escrow.
And don't forget, this comes right after the report was out just a day and a half ago that Daryl Morey went to Ben Simmons and said, hey, Ben, how you doing? What's going on? And Ben basically stonewalled him. And at some point, how can you blame the Sixers for like, look, Ben, you're not talking to us. You're not communicating with us. We have no other option. Like, they had to do the nuclear option again because Ben is not being professional. I don't know what advice he's getting in these therapy sessions, but it's obviously not getting through to him very well because, part of being an adult, Mike, is, hey, if something's going on with me, you tell your boss. You tell them, hey, this is what's going on. This is how we're going to deal with it. But Ben doesn't understand that.
I thought the point that Hudrick brought up on Wednesday's show was interesting. Hey, if you, Josh, said, look, I'm having some mental, health situation, I need to go talk to someone. And I said, well, this is who I want you to go talk to. You might say, well, I don't want to go to who you want me to talk to. I want to go to who I feel comfortable with.
Which is fine. But then let's have a conversation about how are you doing, Ben? What is going on?
Correct. At that point, if he says, look, I want to go talk, and apparently, according to Hudrick the other day, Ben has been talking to somebody throughout the summer.
Correct. Through the NBA Players Association.
But through the Players Association.
Which,
not
again, is
through
fine.
The Sixers.
But give us an update. Let us know
exactly.
what's going on.
I don't have a problem with who he's talking to. It's the fact that he's keeping those sessions, I don't want to say private, because it's not, you're really not, you're bound by confidentiality when you're talking to those. But
that's the thing. Ramona Shelburne pointed this out the other day, and this is in the article I put at 973ESPN.com. The Sixers are not asking for details. They just want to know how you're doing. Is there progress here? What's the status? What are we working towards? Like, they want to know the macro, not the micro. And I don't think there's anything wrong with asking those questions. Mike, if I came to you one day and says, Mike, I got a problem, and then I went and disappeared, you'd be like, well, what am I going to do here? This guy's supposed to be doing a job.
Right. You need to check in.
Just check in. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know what's up. And Ben doesn't want to do that for whatever reason. And I don't think it's unfair for the Sixers to want to say, we just want to know what's up.
Over on the at Mike Gill show on Twitter, Max McGrath 33 says, Wildwood guy here. Not an Eagles fan, but I'm surrounded by them. Thought on an OBJ fit with the Eagles. Yeah, I'm out on the OBJ fit. And I know Mike McGarry is he'll probably get a kick out of it. Like, he had 3 very good years, his first 3 years. Beckham Jr.'s status of a player in this league was elevated because he made a one-handed catch. I make that catch every Saturday out back with a beer in my hand and a grill master in my other hand. Catching a football with one hand isn't all that impressive for people who, can actually catch a football.
Isn't your job to catch a football?
I can catch the football with one hand. It's not impressive. I'm not impressed. People, though, in the media blew this one-handed catch so out of proportion to make this guy like he was the next great thing. He made a great catch. A one-handed catch is not all that crazy. These guys are in the NFL. They can catch the freaking football with one hand. If I could do it, they could do it. No, I don't want OBJ. Thank you very much for asking, though. Max McGrath. Mike McGarry's on the way. Sports Bash is live on 97.3 ESPN. 242 Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. His appearance is brought to you by Calvi Electric, now offering residential services for your home and business online, calvielectric.com. I'm Mike Gill. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Gill Show. Watch the show live on our YouTube channel, streaming live video. We'll talk to Mike McGarry right now from the Press of Atlantic City. A little look at what's going on this weekend as everything that is happening. We got Eagles, Sixers, everything's in play. Big high school football games this weekend as well. The playoffs start tonight. Let's bring in Michael McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City right now on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. At AC Press McGarry, what's going on, Mike?
Hey, Mike, big weekend up ahead. Like we said earlier in the week, just a great time of year with pro football, college football, high school football, NBA, just an exciting time of the sports calendar.
It is. Now, I want to start off. Odell Beckham was released today. I'm getting text tweets. Everybody, hey, should the Eagles go out and get him? You're a Giant guy. Is he worth the headache?
Not right now, he's not. Maybe in 2016 he was, but this is 2021. And, Odell Beckham had a great first three seasons. I wrote this down. He had 12 touchdown catches, 13 touchdown catches, 10 touchdown catches since 2000 in his first three seasons. After that, he's had just 16 total touchdown catches. His career hasn't been the same, Mike. 2016, the Giants make the playoffs, right? They're 11-5. They go up to Green Bay to play. That's when the boat picture came out. Remember all the Giants receivers on the boat in the Caribbean during the bye week? That game, earlier in that game, Eli Manning, it's a scoreless game first quarter. Eli Manning drops the ball in Odell Beckham's hands. It should have been a short touchdown. Beckham dropped it. He hasn't been the same player since. I am out on Odell Beckham Jr. The Eagles should be out also.
I agree. And I joke, hey, he made that one-handed catch and everybody went crazy that this guy's the next big thing. But, hey, it was just a highlight reel catch. A lot of guys can make a catch like that. But quite frankly, since you mentioned it, I said the same thing. He had a great first 3 years. He hasn't been very productive since that time. I pass on Beckham. Now, he's, I guess, the waiver wire procedure. The Eagles do have the 8th option to get him. Would he be a fit, though? Okay, he's a headache. He's not the same player. But do you think they take a shot and say, look, because one area, Mike, I think a lot of people saw on this team is, they probably could have used a veteran receiver. They don't have that guy. So do you think that they would be interested?
To me, I see where people could sort of make the leap considering how the receiving corps has performed. But again, I look at, let's see what the Eagles have in Quez Watkins. Let's give Jalen Reagor more time, basically. I know a lot of people are out on Reagor, but Watkins certainly has shown promise this season. Let's let those two young guys that you spent draft picks on, that you spent team capital on, let's give them a chance to develop, and let's not hinder their possible development by bringing in Odell Beckham Jr. What's the point of bringing Beckham Jr. in?
Well,
are you going to win any more games with him? I don't think so.
I don't know, but I want to play a game with you real quick. Atlanta plays New Orleans this week. Who do you got?
I think Atlanta might have a shot there, but with the New Orleans playing the backup quarterback. So Atlanta, I think that's one of my upsets this week, but conventional wisdom would say the Saints. I guess I straddled the fence pretty good there.
New England plays Carolina. Who you got?
I got New England in that game. I think the Patriots are headed on an upswing, basically, right there. The only thing to watch out for is the return of Christian McCaffrey, but I like the direction the Patriots are going in.
All right, Minnesota plays at Baltimore. McGarry, who you got?
I got to take Baltimore in that game. I just think Baltimore with the quarterback, more talented team, and Minnesota, kind of seems to be floundering. People have kind of soured on the Vikings, basically.
Arizona plays at San Francisco. Who you got?
I'm taking San Francisco. I don't know about Kyler Murray and his status basically right there. Again, I think the 49ers are a team that's a little better than their record. At home, I'll take the 49ers.
All right, there you go. A little interesting answer there. All right, Chicago is at Pittsburgh Monday night. Who you got?
Home team, Steelers on Monday night. I just think the Steelers figure out a way to get it done at home on a Monday night.
Okay, now a lot of people looking at this Eagles game against the Chargers. It's 1.5, the spread. Philly's coming off a win. Chargers have lost 2 straight. We know the running thing. Eagles ran the ball. Chargers don't. But it's just got an upset feel, or do you think the Chargers get back on track? How do you see that?
I like the Chargers. I think, what have they lost 2 in a row, right? They come off a bad loss to the Patriots.
And a horrible loss to Baltimore.
Yeah, right. And a bye week, I believe, in between. I just think that the Chargers have more talent. I don't want to get too carried away with the Eagles beating a winless Detroit Lions team. Let's not go too much the other way. I know coming across the West Coast, but it's a 4 o'clock game instead of a 1 o'clock game. I think that makes it easier on the Chargers. I like the quarterback better. I just think the Chargers are too good a football team to lose 3 in a row. I'm just playing the odds. I think a little market correction for the Chargers. I just don't see them losing 3 in a row.
All right. Now, in the event that Philly were to upset there, they would be 4-5. And everything that you said, based on the results of the games I gave you, that would put Philadelphia, with a win this week and the results you gave me, that would put them in the number 7 spot in the NFC playoff race. If they beat the Chargers, do we have to start actually taking that serious?
Well, yeah, I think you take it serious as long as it's mathematically possible, right? But I'm going to wait a couple of weeks. Again, I think I said let's wait until about week 12 or week 13. I'll go week 12. Let's take a look after week 12 and take a deep breath and see where the team is then. And then we'll see what, if they're in position to make a run. I think what the Eagles need to do now is to win some football games to put themselves in position. So at the end of November, the beginning of December, you look at the standings and say, hey, what do they got to play for this last month of the season? And every win they have now puts them in a better position when that time comes around. So I'm not going to jump the gun right now and say we're going to start following it week to week. Or what's this team doing? What's that team doing? I think an Eagles win puts them in position. And I think after week 12, you take a deep breath and you say, hey, are they in position for that 7th playoff spot? Who are they competing against? What has to happen? That's when I think you take a look at it.
All right. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Let's go to our next topic today. It's Ben Simmons. Come on down. He wins again. Fined $360,000 for missing the game. The team has essentially said, all right, you're not showing up. You're not telling us anything. We're going to start fining you again. And I guess this is just another turn. Is it a meaningful turn? Will more action be taking place following this decision to fine him?
Mike, I don't understand. For the life of me, I don't understand this at all. I'm not understanding the Sixers' approach here. Here are the Philadelphia 76ers. They've won 5 in a row. They're 7-2. They're getting some outstanding play from Seth Curry. They've got the best Curry in the NBA right now is Seth Curry. It's not Steph Curry. They've got the right Curry on the team. The other night I was up there after the Chicago Bulls game, and Joel Embiid said something in the post-game interview that he said before. He said, boy, this team is getting along great. We have great chemistry. You see Maxey starting to get his legs under him. And Embiid said the chemistry this year, and we're getting along a lot better than we did in past years. Well, what's different from past years? Ben Simmons isn't there this year. That's the main difference. So you got a team that's battling through injuries, that's won 5 in a row. It's kind of a feel-good story. And then you come out on Friday afternoon and you hear again that they're fighting Ben Simmons and stuff of that. For the life of me, I don't know why the Sixers want to try to force Simmons to play for him. Imagine you're one of those Sixers plays. Imagine you're Curry or Maxey, and in 2 weeks, Doc Rivers comes to you and says, hey, Seth Curry, you might be the player of the month of the NBA this month, but you got to go. You're not going to handle the ball as much. You're not going to get as many shots. Or Maxey, you're going to the bench. Or Shake Milton, your minutes are limited here. For the life of me, I can't figure out why the Sixers want to force this square peg into a round hole. Just tell Ben Simmons to go home, out of sight, out of mind. Trade him for a deal that's beneficial to the team and tell Ben, we'll call you when that deal is made. It might be 2 days from now. It might be 2 weeks from now. It might be 2 months from now. In the meantime, we're going to keep winning and developing as a team.
All right, Mike McGarry, that's, it's another twisted turns in the Ben Simmons saga. That's not ending anytime soon, I don't think, anyway. Got high school football playoffs tonight. and it's the first round here. A lot of local teams involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Big game tonight over in Ocean City. Mainland and Ocean City, South Jersey Group 4 quarterfinal. A lot of other teams involved. Absegami at Cedar Creek tomorrow. Egg Harbor Township, first time in the playoffs since 2010. They're traveling up to Cherokee tonight. Middle Township, first time in the playoffs in 5 or 6 years. They're going over to Haddonfield tonight. Exciting time of the year. This is the quarterfinal round of the South Jersey and Central Jersey bracket. So they're playing for the start of the play of the sectional championships. The non-public teams will kick in next week in their state brackets. Just a great time of year with everything going on. Playoffs begin tonight in high school football.
All right. And also, you got an interesting article, a thought-provoking article for this week's must-win column over at the Press of Atlantic City, and that is about altering the scheduling process moving forward. I read that and found it. It's funny because I was one of the people who always said, there's no need to kind of join the West Jersey. You can kind of keep the Cape Atlantic and do almost what you said, like they kept trying to do it on enrollment. Nah, just do the honor system. We're not going to be good this year. We'll go down here. You go because you're better. You play in that division. I think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, I do. I think the West Jersey Football League, the point I made in the article is it's really saved Cape Atlantic League football and South Jersey football in general. It's sort of given a lot of teams scheduling options. It's made some struggling programs have the ability to rebuild their programs and play against opponents of similar status or something like that. I just think two things that the WJFL needs to do is give some teams consistent divisions. This year, Ocean City had division games against Seneca and Pemberton. Mainland was in a division with Deptford and Clearview. Let's keep the divisions a little bit more local. Let's cross over against teams like that. And let's try not to give teams – the way it's done now is if you're really good for 2 years, you kind of get a killer schedule the next 2 years. And in high school football, players come and go. There's an ebb and flow. And just because you're good in 2018 doesn't mean you're going to be good in 2022. So, you see some teams kind of get caught in the middle, like Buna, Pleasantville this year, like Atlantic City, and they kind of have a couple of years ago, and they kind of have tough seasons. So I think the West Jersey Football League has been a big, big positive, but a little tweak in their scheduling process, which I outlined in the column online, I think would make the league even better.
Mike McGarry, I implore you high school football fans to go check it out. It's a really good article over at Press of Atlantic City at AC Press McGarry. And we'll do it again on Monday. We'll look back at all the action that happened this weekend. We got a ton, Sixers, Bulls, Eagles, of course, and all the stuff that happened in high school football. All right, Mike, enjoy the games this weekend, man.
All right, I will. You too. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks.
I will do that, my friend. I will do that. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, kind enough to join us Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and he's brought to you by Calvi Electric, now offering residential services for your home and business. Visit them online at calvieelectric.com. There you go. There's our contest sounder right there, 609-573-3776, 609-573-3776. Who's got the fastest fingers in South Jersey? I need the fastest three right now. You got a spot in this year's 99 Bottles Party, powered by Vagabond Kitchen and Tap House in Egg Harbor Township. That's where this year's show is, Vagabond Kitchen and Tap House. The particulars, you out there listening, calling right now, you can win Eagles Club Box tickets, You can win Flyers tickets. You can win Sixers tickets. You can win concert tickets. You can win tickets to some other great events in the area. They're all going to be at Vagabond. 99 bottles, 99 tickets, 99 prizes, and 99 people. 3 of them right now. 609-573-3776. 609-573-3776. Hour 2 of the Sports Bash Live on a Friday, 97.3 ESPN. It's a Sal Pal Friday here on 97.3 ESPN. That's thanks to Sal Pal, our guy Johnny G, Burger Realty team over there in Ocean City. Thanks to those guys who always kind enough to deliver us Sal Pal for a Sal Pal Friday here, which Sal Pal's going to be in the booth this weekend. He'll be providing the color commentary. He'll be the analyst in Baltimore this weekend for Baltimore and Minnesota, which has some impact on, I guess, the Eagles if you're hanging on to that wild card berth there. Sal Pal Friday. How are you, Sal?
Yes, I'm going to be with the great legendary voice, Mark Kestisher, who does such a great job doing play-by-play on ESPN radio for basketball and football. So I did it 2 years ago, and because we had COVID rules and we weren't in the booth, I wasn't able to do it for a couple of years, but now I'm back and I'm looking forward to it. And yes, you are correct, Mike Gill. A Vikings loss helps the Eagles, no question about it. I know people say I'm crazy, and but hey, Mike, there's 9 games to go, right? So come on.
Hey, listen. People are saying I'm crazy because I'm in the same boat of they statistically have the easiest schedule left in football, and Carolina ahead of them has the most difficult. San Francisco has a very look. There's a lot. This is an indictment of not the Eagles, Sal, or a good football team. There's a lot of bad teams, and one of those bad teams has to be the 7th seed.
Well, Michael, you and I talked about this summer. We said this season, because there's 17 games, everything is on the table for a long time. You're going to have players who are injured. You're going to have players who are banged up and need time off. There's going to be a war of attrition. There's going to be load management, and we're seeing it. Here we go into week 9, and the top seed in the AFC is their top player's gone, and Derrick Henry gone. The top player in the NFC, their top player is gone. Aaron Rodgers gone. With the Packers. And the thing about the Packers specifically is this. He is tested every day because of the NFL COVID rules because he won't get vaccinated. The law of averages is going to catch up with you as far as these COVID tests go. You're going to get somehow exposed, and you're going to test positive if you get tested every day and you're not vaccinated. The odds are against you. And so what happens week 16 and they're playing for home field or they're playing for the division title and he gets it again? Or what happens in the playoffs and he gets tested positive again? Or what happens on the doorstep of the Super Bowl? He's out in L.A. and he tests positive again. It's a completely volatile situation.
Yeah, and I look at it like this. Hey, Nick Sirianni has a chance now to kind of, I don't want to say win people back over, but show people that he is growing as a head coach. Okay, I did things wrong. I had to learn from it, and I did something last week. It seemingly worked. We have an opponent this week that we think we can do that again. If he shows us that, will people start to warm up more to the idea that he's learning on the job?
I agree with you 100%. We saw, and this is something else that we said all year long, you and I, on this program. There are going to be growing pains. They've been pretty painful. The Detroit game, maybe he learned a lesson that he's got a running back who quickly hits the hole. He's got 2 of them that quickly hit the hole. And now he's got Lane Johnson back. And a healthy Lane Johnson at right tackle, is an all-pro. A healthy Lane Johnson at right tackle is an all-pro. And Jordan Mailata is nearly 400 pounds of mountain that just moves people out of the way. They can run the ball with that O-line. Jason Kelce, every year, Pro Football Focus says this guy, his win-block ratio in the run game is tops among all centers in the NFL. So, they can run the ball. He has just refused to, or maybe told by ownership, the mandate is that you will throw the ball. So 4:05 p.m. Sunday on this great radio station, if you hear Merrill Reese say, and dropping back to pass is Jalen Hurts on 1st and 10 on the Eagles' first possession, you're going to hear boos. You will hear people boo.
Yeah, with good reason, too. We know that Los Angeles is one of the worst, if not the worst, against the run in the NFL. And they've really struggled the last couple of weeks, and they specifically really struggled against the team you're going to see on Sunday, Baltimore. I mean, they couldn't figure out what to do with a team that ran the ball in a variety of ways at them when the Baltimore Ravens beat them, 32-6 a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I watched it happen. They were eviscerated. You can run on them. Hey, the Patriots did it last week. I went back and watched a lot of the run plays. You can run on. They are built to rush the passer on their front seven. That Brandon Staley defense is built to rush the passer. It's not built to stop the run. Okay, that's the bottom line. So they can be run on. 1, 2, flip the script to the other side of the ball. They are tied for the league lead in drop passes. They are tied for the league lead in drop passes. That's not helping them. It hurt them badly against Baltimore. It hurt them badly against New England. And we all know, I mean, I know for sure, I've been covering this league a long time. I've been in a lot of the stadiums. People talk about noise. There's noise in stadiums, Michael, but then there's latent hostility. Okay? You feel it. You feel like you don't want to be there. And I've had many, many players say, hey, listen, you know, you just got to watch because, you know, you're coming out the tunnel, people say stuff. They don't throw stuff anymore. You know, back in the day, they used to do it at the vet, but, you know, it's distracting. It's menacing. You know, they still egg the bus on I-95 when it rolls up to the stadium. I mean, you know, it's not a pleasant place to play. And now, okay, you're coming in from Los Angeles. You land in Philadelphia. You got to cool your heels all weekend long. You don't get to the stadium, to the link until late. Darkness comes. It's a menacing place.
Yeah, they don't play a lot of 4 o'clock games in Philly. You know, typically you get
for
the 1
a
o'clock.
good reason. They have, especially if it's the Giants or the Washington football team or anybody on I-95. They don't do it because of, you know, let's put a fine point on it. The inebriation factor, Michael, is very high. That it pins the meter.
I guess I shouldn't have sent my girlfriend and her son to their first Eagles game on Sunday. That was probably a bad decision on my part, huh?
I wouldn't do it.
Hey, Sal, you typically, now you sent me a beautiful piece for Veterans Day, which is coming up, and I want you to hit on that as well. The Eagles are going to honor 2 local men, but typically you will email me the blitz numbers. I didn't get that email. Was it because John Gannon blitzed more this week?
No, I forgot. I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't send it to you. No, they didn't blitz more. They didn't have to. Michael, they didn't have to.
Right.
You know, but they'll have to. Listen, the one thing that Justin Herbert is pretty good at is getting the ball out of his hands quickly. He doesn't take a lot of sacks. He gets the ball out. The problem is they're not good at catching it. As for the piece on Philly Voice that I sent you, the Eagles are going to honor Elmer Beach, age 99, South Jersey resident since he came back from World War II, was a Marine who survived Guadalcanal and 2 landings at Iwo Jima. An amazing story. Go on phillyvoice.com and read it. And his good friend, Charlie Falk Jr., who landed at Incheon, which is considered, you know, the last major amphibious landing by the American military. It happened during the Korean War. And it was the last one because it was so bloody and so deadly to all sides that the American military planners said, you know what, we really can't do this anymore. So they haven't had a major amphibious landing since Incheon, and Charlie Falk was in the Army and landed at Incheon and survived and won a Purple Heart, was awarded a Purple Heart for being wounded in battle. So these 2 men who, you know, pillars of society in South Jersey and, you know, raised great families who have gone on to great things as business leaders. And Elmer Beach's son, Jim Beach, Senator Jim Beach from Cherry Hill, New Jersey, just got, I believe, all the votes are in, the highest percentage of votes of any state senator in the last election. He's hugely popular and for good reason.
Great article, by the way, and you guys should check it out over at phillyvoice.com. It's, the Eagles are going to honor these men before the game tomorrow, Sunday, I guess I should say, and check that out. Sal Paolantonio, Sal Pal Friday. Obviously, the Eagles won impressively last week. They ran the ball. They tweaked some things on defense. Obviously, that was a big storyline here. But moving forward, can they continue to be consistent? I guess that's the storyline here. So I'll ask you a lot of questions that I keep getting asked. Would you have any interest in adding an Odell Beckham, a Deshaun Jackson, a veteran wide receiver? They don't have a veteran wide out. Would that interest Howie Roseman and the Eagles?
Why? We want to run the ball, Michael. I mean, listen, if you're telling me we can get Justin Jefferson, or, we can have a do-over on that draft, then yes, for sure. But, an older, mercurial wide receiver, no, I don't think so. I think now, listen, hey, Mike, let's get a fullback. How about putting a fullback on the team? How about lining up in the I formation and imposing your will on people?
Well, with this offensive line and with the success that you probably could have doing that, that's not a bad idea.
Michael, forget the aging wide receiver. Let's get a fullback.
Right.
Put a fullback on the team.
Isn't it funny, though, just to say how fast things move in the NFL? Like, there was 4 years ago, Beckham was on top of the world. He was maybe, thought to be the best guy in the league. Now it's like, no, don't need him.
And I was actually thinking about that. And I've actually met Odell Beckham Jr. and interviewed him. And he couldn't have been more pleasant and more engaging and more intelligent. I just don't know what happened there. That's a serious falling out. But, people have to move on sometimes. I mean, if Lennon and McCartney could break up, Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr. could break up. That's no big deal.
So last week, okay, so I was playing golf last week. I'm not very good, just to get that out there. I'm horrible. And the guys at the golf course say, best bet of the week, take Detroit. And to my answer was, it felt like everybody was picking Detroit. It felt like nobody.
Not you and me.
Not me. You and me. Right. So, and I told the guy, well, you know what's going to happen? Everyone's picking Detroit. The Eagles are going to win. They end up winning. Now, this week, Sal, it's reverse. Well, the Eagles ran the ball. The Chargers don't stop the run. Everybody, and the point spread is 1.5. It's down to 1.5, Sal. It feels like this feels like an Eagles line.
Yeah, well, the 1.5 reverse line movement is because all the money went to the Eagles, all of it. There's no question. I don't know what the ticket percentage is, but it's got to be somewhere around 80% of the tickets are on the Eagles. I'd be shocked if it was any less than that. You might want to have your guys down there in AC checked out and check my math on that one. But
I got Vinny and Rocco on that right now. Vinny, Rocco on that.
Yes, please. There better be a Vinny and a Rocco on that for you, Mike. Let me put it that way. No, I think that's the reason why. And you're right. Everybody in the world is picking them, and I'm picking them. Of course. Why wouldn't I? I mean, the Chargers came into Baltimore. I covered that game. I watched them implode. They don't impress me. Mike, Mac Jones beat them last week. Now, you might want to say, well, Bill Belichick was the one who but no, Mac Jones beat that defense. Bill Belichick didn't throw any of those passes. He beat them. And I just think if Mac Jones can do it, I would sure hope that Jalen Hurts could do it at home. Coming off that confidence-building win against the Lions, and that's what that win was. It was a confidence builder. It said, okay, we can do this. We know we can do this. All we have to do is be committed to doing it.
Yeah.
So, you said at the very beginning of this interview, do you think Nick Sirianni learned something? My answer is, I sure hope so.
Yeah.
I sure hope that on Tuesday after the game, when he had his little sit-down with Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman and Lurie's son, Julian, who does all of the analytics now for the Eagles, I hope that Sirianni said, see, we can do this. All we have to do is run the ball. That's our path forward. It may not be our permanent path. We're going to have to figure out how to throw the ball. We can't throw it only 16 times a game and hope to wax people 49-0. We are going to have to throw our way out of trouble sometimes with different defenses. But right now, our path forward is to run the football, period, end of paragraph.
And guess what, Sal? If you have a football mind, if you run the ball for 2 weeks, that should help open up what you want to do, throwing the ball down the road, because now people are starting to say this team wants to run, and then that opens up your pass game.
Sure. Now, we know points come out of the passing game. Ron Jaworski taught me from the first day that I've been hosting the matchup show 18 years ago. Points do come out of the passing game. And like I said, eventually the quarterback is going to have to throw this team out of trouble, either in the red zone or on third down, because defenses are going to wise up and defenses are going to be better and better coached. But unless and until that happens, you just get behind those two big tackles and that center who's maybe the best offensive lineman who's ever put on an Eagles uniform, Jason Kelsey. I know I may be overstating that, but, it's pretty darn close. He's definitely in the conversation. Go behind those guys and let them dictate. They've been reborn. Let them dictate the tempo and keep everybody on schedule. I mean, it's honestly, it couldn't be more simple.
All right, another Sal Pal Friday in the book. That was fun. That was fast, and obviously he picked the Eagles to win there over the L.A. Chargers, who were traveling across the country, losers of 2 straight, and Sal will be on the call with Mark Kessinger as it's Minnesota-Baltimore. That's your national game on ESPN Radio, and Sal Paolantonio will be doing the color commentary for that. So that's where you'll be this weekend, and, of course, we'll do another Sal Pal Friday as the Eagles. Next week we'll get ready for another 4 o'clock game against the Denver Broncos. All right, Sal, enjoy the game this week. We'll look forward to listening to you do the commentary.
Thanks a lot, Michael.
All right, Sal Pal Friday here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Ooh, he picks the Eagles to win as we got plenty more on that. We'll get the picks from everybody coming up here on the show, including Pete Thompson, Adam Kaplan, Casey Joyner, Jeff Kerr. It's a busy show. We hope you're enjoying a Friday edition of the Sports Bash. When we come back, the Sixers are continuing to find Ben Simmons. Is there a resolve in the works here? Well, we'll ask Paul Hudrick when he joins us next on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Download the app in the Apple Store or Google Play. And don't forget, you can register for 99 bottles, just like Justina in the Villas, Kay in Millville, Bill in Egg Harbor City. They were our most recent qualifiers. Justina, Kay, and Bill, we'll see you at Vagabond Kitchen and Tap House on November the 24th. You must be present to win. We have another chance for you to qualify coming up at 4:55. 325. Paul Hudrick is here as we take a look at the Sixers. Getting ready for a weekend matchup with the Bulls. They win again last night, but more Ben Simmons drama, unfortunately. We're set to take a look at it. Paul Hudrick is here from Liberty Ballers as the Sixers win last night. We'll get into that. We'll take a look at the Bulls coming up this weekend. But unbelievably, new news in the Ben Simmons, and it's not that he's being traded. It's not that he's returning, Paul. He is being fined, and we talked Wednesday a little bit. I thought you made a great point and made some sense, but the team has now decided you're not coming to games. Now we got to start finding you. Is this an ugly turn? Is this just a typical turn? How would you kind of encapsulate this report today?
Yeah, it's certainly significant news in the fact that they are going to now fine him, and it's they're no longer going to just go along kind of with that. And I think it goes beyond, Mike, because like you and I talked, and I agree with you, about the point of, mental health. It is a very sensitive subject, and the team does need to have appropriate respect for that. But I think it's not, at least from the people I've spoken to, it's not just that. The deal is that he is getting help. He's seeking resources through the Players Association and not through the team, which the team is okay with, from what I understand. What they're more upset with is the fact that they feel like they're in the dark about everything. And not just about, as far as his mental health goes and his treatment. It's not like they want to know specific doctors or what's being discussed or anything of that nature. It's also the basketball stuff, Mike. All he's done is participate in individual workouts at the practice facility. He hasn't done anything as far as the mandated health, as far as the strength and conditioning. He's not participating in film sessions. So I think from the Sixers' perspective, they kind of view it as his actions are not showing good faith that he is making an effort to get back onto the floor. And the other important thing to point out too, Mike, is that when we talk about these fines, they're going into an escrow account. So it's not like Josh Harris is pocketing his money. It is going into an escrow account so that when he does, what they want to happen is him eventually return to the team. If that does happen, he will get that money back. So that is another important aspect of this, because I know that, because quite frankly, the optics don't look great, right? When you're talking about a guy dealing with a mental health issue and that the team is now resuming, and fining him, it doesn't look good. I agree with that. But I think with the Sixers, at least from the people I've spoken to, it's more about they feel like they are being left in the dark, and that his actions as far as basketball activities go, he's not doing it in good faith.
Yeah, I think today he's getting fined like $360,000. He didn't appear to the game, and it's essentially the Sixers saying, "Look, we're trying to support you, but you're almost not letting us support. You're not letting us be a part of this rehab."
Yeah, I don't even necessarily think it's that. Like, I think they're fine with the fact that he's using the resources that are provided to him from the Players Association. I don't think they have an issue with that. I mean, I think the one way you can look at it as, I guess, if we kind of try to compare it, which I know is sometimes difficult to do, but if you try to compare it to a regular everyday person, if you go to your employer with a mental health issue, you would have to provide some form of something that indicates that you're receiving help, and the help that you are receiving, and that you are attempting to do this in order to come back to work. There's a lot of gray area there. So I don't think that's a perfect comparison by any stretch, but
hey, I don't envy anybody who's in the middle of making a decision here, trying to figure out what they have to do, how they're handling this thing.
For sure. And I think that's where the team is, as far as they don't want to be doing this. You know what I mean? Like, they don't want to fine him. They don't want to be what they want is just for him to be a little bit more. I don't even want to say more transparent, because that's not the right way to look at it. They want to see more signs that what he is doing is an effort to get back on the court and play for the team. That's what they want to see. Certainly the Sixers organization, people I've spoken with, I feel like they do have a sensitivity to that, and they understand that. And this isn't them trying to be inhumane or not sympathize with where Ben is coming from. I think, just to go back to it, it's more that they're not seeing an effort from him that indicates that he wants to come back and play for the team. And I think that's the sticking point.
Hey, I outside of the way they're handling this, I think if you look at the Sixers' organizational track record, they are very sensitive to things like this. I mean,
Sure.
in many aspects of their hiring, so to suggest that they are not taking Ben Simmons' claim serious, I don't think there is any indication of that in any of their hiring process, in any avenue of down to, the play-by-play broadcaster, the person in sales, the person who works in the graphics department. They have a very good track record of handling these type of things. So I don't think that they can really be questioned there. So I think it's fair for them to say, hey, we're trying to be supportive and you're not letting us in. And this is where this could get really kind of, you wonder. Joel goes out last night. We have great chemistry. The guys are getting along, best of all, better than ever. And is he like indirectly trying to say, look, this guy needs to bleep or get off the pot, or you guys need to figure something out, like, what's going on here? You wonder how long this can keep going on. I know they said 4 years, blah, 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 but every day it has to evolve into maybe we're okay without him.
Yeah, well, I think there are two ways to look at it, and I think what you just laid out is a fair way to look at it. Like, I feel like there will come a point if they keep playing it, like if they keep playing well, because let's preface it with that. It's still very early, but they are playing very well without him. If they keep playing well without him, there are two ways to kind of look at it. One is there has to come a point where you're playing so well with Adam that you're right. You kind of are better off with Adam. So maybe you just make a trade to bring in a valuable player that can help you and just to move on from the distraction and all that. But at the same time, if you're playing well, this kind of thing, like at this point, Mike, like all of the stuff that's come out, all of the hoopla, all the off the court drama is not affecting them on the court. So in a weird way, it kind of helps Daryl Morey's negotiating stance, because while they're fine and they're not letting this affect them, look, I mean, yeah, the Boston Celtics beat the Heat last night, but overall, that's not a pretty situation. You look at the New Orleans Pelicans 1-8, and who knows when Zion's going to play. Like, I'm just saying that while they're pushing through it and they're dealing with the drama and they continue to move on and play well, other teams aren't dealing, things aren't going as well for them. So as that continues, maybe you get to a point where you're actually dealing in a position of strength where a team is looking to get something of value and they're looking at a Ben Simmons, and maybe they get a little antsy and they offer more than what they were previously because now you're dealing in a position of strength. So I think there's arguments to make on both sides of the coin. And I think at this point, if they're going to keep playing well and they're not going to allow it to be a distraction, you ride it out until you get a good offer. Like I said, I think there does come a point. Is it the trade deadline? Perhaps where maybe you have to just capitalize on this team being good, but I don't think we're even close to that point yet.
Well, and here's the rub. Morey had said, 2-3 weeks ago, we can add 3 role players. That's not helping us. I don't disagree with them, because if you bring 3 guys in, are they taking roles away from Maxey, Milton, Korkmaz, Drummond? Who are the 3 guys? What do they do? Niang? Like, I don't need more of them. I like the roles that those guys have. I don't want to diminish their roles to get more role players, more playing time. You're just it's almost like the year that Boston had like 11 guys and they were all good. Everyone's like, Boston's this great team. They had too many good players and none of them were superstars. They just had a lot of good players, not enough great players. So you're stuck in the situation where you have Simmons, he's not playing. If you trade him, I might only get role players in return. If I have too many role players, then I have too many guys. They're in a very, very odd situation here. So it's almost like you ride it out and hope that when he comes back, he's a better version than the guy who left the court against Atlanta.
It's an excellent point, Mike, that you make about the idea of trading for more role players, because like you said, they already have some pretty darn good ones that are playing a big role and getting, like, think about Matisse Thybulle right now. Like, he's he's playing big time minutes. Like, there's a chance that if Ben Simmons doesn't come back and Matisse Thybulle keeps playing this many minutes, he could challenge for a defensive player of the year, if not at least a first team all defensive nod. Like, that's how good he's been. And if he can keep advancing his minutes, he's there. And then the other guy I'd point to would be Tyrese Maxey. Right now, this experience that he's getting is so invaluable for his development. and he's playing really well, given the circumstances and all he has. A guy who just turned 21 yesterday, and the way he's playing, the level he's playing at in the starting lineup for a team that is currently in first place and wants to try to win a championship. So when you factor all that in, Colin Sexton was a name that was thrown out a lot. Are we sure that Colin Sexton is definitely better and going to be better than Tyrese Maxey? Because I'm not sure about that, especially when I consider both ends of the floor. Colin Sexton's not a good defender. Tyrese Maxey showing that he might be a pretty darn good one, plus what he provides you on the offensive end of the floor.
Yeah.
They no longer can you trade for Malcolm Brogdon because of his extension, but am I sure that 100% that Malcolm Brogdon is a better player and going to be a better player than Tyrese Maxey? I'm not certain of that. So that with all that said, I think that the only way you pull a trigger on a trade for Ben Simmons right now is if you are getting an upgrade, a clear upgrade over what you have. And it's funny because we've been talking about it in the Liberty Ballers Slack, and it's getting to a point now, Mike, where I don't know that I want Tyrese Maxey coming off the bench. And I might be if I'm looking to move Ben Simmons, I might want a wing instead to put in place of the starting lineup over Danny Green, with all due respect to Danny Green, who I think is an important part of this team. That might be more of the caliber of player I'm looking for now.
Right. And Green would add just a good role player coming off the bench. And I think Green, his role should now be 15 to 18 minutes off the bench. Hopefully that night he's got the hot hand.
Right. And I think at age 34, dealing with a hamstring injury now, he dealt with a hip issue last year. He had the calf injury in the playoffs. This is not a young guy. So maybe in a weird way, you're helping him by lessening his role, and maybe you're making him more effective in that regard too. You're saving him kind of for the playoffs, and he can maybe have a bigger impact in that way. So yeah, I mean, you could really strengthen your team by adding a wing upgrade that can enter your starting lineup if you're able to do that in a trade for Ben Simmons, and instead giving Maxey the controls, allowing him to be your starting point guard. Because so far, Mike, there's nothing I've seen from Tyrese Maxey that says, you know what? I think I'm good. I think he needs to go to the bench. If anything, and he talked about it, and Doc Rivers has talked about it, I think he's deferring too much. I think he could be attacking more. And so I don't want to put him on the bench or bring him, have him come off the bench where that's not, he's not in a position to do that as much. So I want to see more of Maxey, not less of him. So I would be looking at wings.
You were writing today that you were just about to write something fun, and then the Ben Simmons news had, but then the people said, no, what were you going to say? So what's fun about this team so far?
A lot of things, really. I mean, I don't want to give too much of the story away, but basically when you look at a guy like Georges Niang, there are people in Philly, the Sixers fans, that are ready to take a bullet for Georges Niang 9 games into the season.
They also wanted to do that for Mike Scott a couple of years ago.
Sure. But
no, you're right.
I think it's the whole idea of Georges Niang is a guy who is good as a basketball player. He's good at the sport. Like, you just see all the little, even beyond shooting the basketball, all the little things he does. He's a winning player, to put it simply. And then on top of that, he's so self-aware and understands his limitations, and he's really feisty. He fights for loose balls. He talks trash. Like, he's so likable. And then you start looking up and down this roster. Andre Drummond, I would say, fits into the same mold. You look at all the young guys they have, whether it's Maxey, Thibault, Korkmaz, even Shake Milton. Like, these guys are all pretty good as players, but then they're also really likable guys. They're easy to root for, I guess is a good way. Like a guy like Seth Curry, who went undrafted, who lives in the shadow of his brother, who, has been a nomad in the league and now is really entering his own at 30 years old. Like, there are just a lot of likable guys that are very easy to root for. And on top of it, they're playing really good basketball. Because I think too, Mike, like the overarching theme of the story is, with at least on the court with the Sixers, we haven't had this like crossroads of them being good and also fun at the same time. And I think right now they're both. I think they're playing good basketball. They're fun to watch, and then they're fun guys to root for.
Yeah, and if you're watching the show, you can see there's the link to Paul's story over at libertyballers.com. One guy you left out was his pictures in the article is Drummond. And to me, it's almost like Morey says, our best player is Embiid. He's the guy. But when Embiid goes out, we fall apart. I'm not letting that happen again. Howard was a nice energizer bunny, but I don't feel like people – I talked about this with Mark Jackson yesterday, Paul. I feel that Drummond had this stigma of that Embiid owned rent in his head and that he just sucked because when Embiid played against him, he dominated him. But against everybody else, Drummond was a very, very good player.
Yeah.
And I don't think people knew that or noticed that. So when you got him, you're like, why are we getting this guy? Embiid dominates this guy all the time, and they don't even like each other. Now you're seeing that Drummond is a guy who essentially was the lead piece on his own team. And Morey says, we need to get a guy who's of that caliber, not to play with Embiid, but to play behind Embiid.
Yeah, a few things. One, Joel Embiid has dominated and gotten the heads of a lot of big men, so Andre Drummond is not unique in that circumstance. R. Jackson Frank for Liberty Ballers just recently wrote about that. This isn't like a redemption story with Andre Drummond. Andre Drummond never became a bad basketball player. He simply became an overpaid one when he's not a max contract player, and he got a max contract. That's it. That's not to say he's not a good player. This guy's 28 years old. He's made 2 All-Star teams. He made an All-NBA team at one point. This guy can play. It's just he's got limitations, and other places, those limitations got exposed because he had to play so much. As you alluded to, he's backing up Joel Embiid here. As Joel Embiid's backup, with all due respect to Dwight Howard, Andre Drummond, I would say, is a significant upgrade over Dwight Howard. And I think one of the biggest things, we talked about it before the season, Mike, the discipline. He's a much, 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 much more disciplined player than Dwight Howard is. The mobility, he's a decade younger almost than Dwight Howard, and he moves so much better. And credit to Andre Drummond, because I think he's also in really good shape. I think he's in the best shape he's been in a couple of years here. And you see it kind of like in pick and roll coverage where he can show on a guard. You don't want him switching onto a guard, but he can show on a guard. He can get back to the paint. He can trap. He can do a lot of things defensively that Dwight Howard simply could not do. He's a much better, obviously, passer than Dwight Howard. All these little things he does that make him a significant upgrade. And, I think the big thing when I look at Drummond, I look at Niang, and like they were pretty unheralded signings, which Doc Rivers has taken a lot of credit for and has not let us forget that he had a big hand in those signings. But what I think they've done, and what I think the big thing about this, the biggest strength of this team is that they don't have weaknesses. You have a good solid backup 4. You have a good solid backup 5. You have shooting. You have defense. You have some guys that can create. You have guys that can do a little bit of everything. There are no glaring holes on this roster right now. And I think that's the biggest difference between last year's team and this year's.
Other than the guy who can create in the crunch.
Sure. Which Seth Curry has done, though, to be fair. He's done that.
Right.
The Portland game and the Chicago game, he was huge down the stretch in both of those games. I agree with your sentiment, Mike. Like, you're right. They haven't solved those issues. But I'm just saying that so far, the only game where that's shown up is the Brooklyn game. Other than that, they've closed games out there. They've won games.
We're going to get to the point of this season where it was much like last year, where Tobias was playing really well and Ben was playing pretty well. And it was, I'll believe it when they get to the playoffs. Like, whatever you're doing now, fine. But show me that in the playoffs. Now it's almost, I'll believe it when you get to the second round of the playoffs. You've shown me you can win first round, but I want to see you play at this level when it goes up to the next notch. So Seth Curry's going to get into that role where, hey, look at him. He's evolved this game, but I want to see you do it when you're getting more attention put on you and all that, and we'll see. So outside of them getting a proven guy to do that, these questions are not going to be answered until sometime in May.
Right. No, 100%. Yeah, and I think they've found a little something offensively too. It's not just that Seth Curry. Don't get me wrong. It is that Seth Curry has played well. That's a big part of it. But I think him and Joel running that 2-man game, running those DHOs in crunch time, that's their best offense. And I think they have to stick with that. I love Tobias Harris as a player. I think he does a lot of really good things. And he has hit some big shots for this team. But I think their best option is Seth Curry, Joel Embiid, dribble handoffs, everyone else space the floor with your hands open and ready to hit a three. And that's, I think, the versatility of the fact that, you know what, you can close it. If you go like an offense for defense substitution, you could put George Niang on the floor and just tell him to stand in a corner or stand on the wing with his hands ready. And I think that makes a difference too, to have that guy that's just willing and ready to fire. So I think there are ways they can combat those issues this year that they didn't have last year.
Paul Hudrick, Liberty Ballers. Make sure you read all his stuff over there. And, of course, the Sixers play the Bulls tomorrow night. Round number 2. They played Wednesday. They'll back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. You can hear that game right here on 97.3 ESPN. They'll play the Knicks on Monday and the Bucks on Tuesday. Busy, busy, busy. I wonder if Embiid sits on one of those. I thought last night might have been the night that he sat again, but they decided to play him. So we'll see if he sits. Bulls, Knicks, Bucks. That's what's coming up. Toronto as well, who's playing pretty good basketball early on. Paul Hudrick, everybody. Thanks, Paul.
Anytime, Mike. You got it, man.
All right, we will talk to Paul throughout the season, of course, here on Inside the Sixers. And the Sixers, of course, they are on Saturday night in a game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Your home for Sixers basketball. We are just getting warmed up on the Friday. Happy Hour Friday, Pete Thompson. In about an hour from now, a little less than an hour, actually, we'll get Pete Thompson's thoughts on this Eagles-Chargers, his pick for the game. PT's going to be out and about tomorrow. Then at Burke Motor Group, he'll give you the details. Casey Joyner, one thought every game. Adam Kaplan, 14 minutes from now. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. 3:52 Sports Bash Friday. Happy Hour Friday. Pete Thompson will join me in less than an hour from now, plus another hour from now. We'll give you another chance to qualify for this year's 99 Bottles. Sports Bash is brought to you by Deborah Heart and Lung Center. When it's your heart, you don't take chances. Be sure, demand Deborah.org. Good conversation with Paul Hudrick from Liberty Ballers. The Observer Sports checks in. Brogdon and Chris Duarte, a perfect deal for Ben. I don't know if that deal's on the table anymore. Brogdon just signed a extension with the Pacers, I believe, right? Didn't Brogdon sign a long-term extension with the Pacers? Pretty sure they did. SLR checks in. They don't want to pay him for his failures. Not a job or employer in the world who wouldn't do the same but trade him immediately. I don't know what that's referencing. Are you talking about Ben? Are you talking about our OBJ conversation from earlier? Mike, you are sounding like if a coach would have put me in, we would have won states. You could never one-hand the ball like Odell did in 100 tries. No, I don't think so. I probably could one-hand the ball like Odell did in 100 times. If you threw that ball past me 100 times, I'd catch it probably 70 times. I mean, catching the football with one hand, Ryan Robinson, is not – if you're impressed by a guy catching a football with one hand, then you're easily impressed. I'm not. He high-pointed the ball. He high-pointed the ball while pass interfered, a one-handed ball behind his head, all while staying in bounds. The part of the staying in bounds, like I'll give him credit for like maneuvering his body, staying in bounds, but catching a football with one hand is not all that impressive to me. If it impresses you, Ryan, I'm happy for you. I'm glad that a one-handed catch is something impressive to you. If the coach would have put me in, no, we would not have won states. Our football team was very poor. And playing me anywhere would not have helped us win states, considering I did not play wide receiver. So sorry, Ryan, to ruin your theory, but I'm not all that impressed by somebody catching a football with one hand. I find it to be almost elementary because these guys are so good. This isn't a knock on the fact that he caught the ball with one hand. It's the fact that I'm not surprised when a wide receiver in the NFL catches a football with one hand. We have made such a big deal out of it because people like Ryan Robinson can't catch a ball with one hand. It's not all that difficult. And it's not just me. Okay, take me out of it. My neighbor can catch the football with one hand. Beer in one hand, although my neighbor drinks scotch, I believe. Scotch in one hand, football thrown. He's catching it with one hand. Catching a football with one hand is not all that impressive. So Ryan Robinson, go on out there and have a football catch, and by the end of the week, I guarantee you too will be able to catch the football with one hand. I have faith in you, Ryan Robinson. Sports Bash is live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. On the text board, Mike, you're right. One-handed catches aren't impressive. They also wear gloves that make the ball stick to that one hand even easier. Yeah, I mean, catching a football with one hand isn't like some crazy skill. There's grill masters wearing white New Balances with blue ends, making that catch every weekend. They got the grill stick in one hand, they're catching the ball in the other hand. Come on, dude. Adam Kaplan has football at 4 next.
with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Kaplan.
I have real confidence that our football operations can once again create a dominant football team.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you locally by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long. Wild Wild West, Tropicana, Harrah's Resort Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. Adam Kaplan is here today as we look at the Eagles and the Chargers after a 44-6 victory by the Birds. Positive vibes, I would imagine, over at the NovaCare complex, Adam.
Yeah, it is. It's Mike, good to be with you. Yeah, no doubt. They have to feel good about everything. You could just tell by the coordinators. There's a little bit of smile in their face. Talking to some agents who have players in the Eagles, they seem to be they seem to be happy. Not only that, they just have responded to the game plan from last week. As we talked about in today's Inside the Bird show, we actually also dropped a special show. Jeff Mosher and I did a sort of 35-minute plus retrospective of the first half and gave out our midseason awards and our disappointments. But what had to be so impressive was the Eagles' offensive line play. Best I've seen in 2 years. It's funny. They just went in. It's kind of like the coaches, Mike, knew that they could go into last week's game and kick the butts of the Lions' defensive line. And they went and did it. You don't see that very much in the NFL, but they sure as heck did it.
Do they repeat it? Do they feel like they can watch that tape and kind of reenact what they did last week? Because that's the verbiage I've been getting all week long is you got one of the worst rush defenses, and the Eagles have a line that should be able to win at the point of attack again.
Yeah, so the Chargers gave up 5.2 yards per carry to opposing running backs. But I know Brandon Staley, their head coach, bristled at that. He brought up certain situations that happened earlier this season. They just got back one of their best run-stopping defensive tackles last week in Justin Jones, and they were better against the run against the Patriots. But in the end, yeah, the blueprint should be to mix the run in. They're not going to come – I don't see them coming out and running the ball like they did versus they're facing a much better defense, much better front seven. And, by the way, the Chargers run different front. They both – Lions and Chargers run a 34, but their 34 is different than Aaron Glenn's 34. Not all 34s are the same. Responsibilities are different, and they're more stout against the run. So I do expect the Eagles to try to run the ball, but it won't be anywhere near as last week, and you're going to have to make some plays in the pass game where it's a little bit harder because the Chargers have a pretty good secondary.
Yeah, well, I know that they ran it, 46, 8 times, something to that extent. I don't know that Eagles fans, Adam, are asking for that volume of rushing. But where would you kind of hope to see Nick Sirianni kind of have them, to keep the game? You want to keep Herbert off the field. That's obviously they have had challenges defensively against these quarterbacks who can make plays by themselves. Herbert can do it with his arm, and he's got a good assortment of receivers. So keep them off the field, run the ball, right? How many times?
Yeah,
what's
Mike,
the number you're looking at?
Right. I don't look at a number. I look at it, what's the best way to win? I call it mixing in the run. That you have to score. Like playing keep away doesn't work. You have to score because they're going to get the ball. When they get the ball, your defense has to stop them. So what you have to do is have a plan to use your talent in the best way possible. The good thing is in their injury report, Jalen Reagor is going to play. We were told that on Monday he started rehabbing his ankle with the belief that he'd be able to play, and credit to him, he's going to be able to play in this game. Yes, I love the way they used Reagor before he hurt his ankle, Mike. I love that. So to me, there's a way you can win. Yeah, you can run the ball as you were suggesting, but running it, not that they're going to run it 30 times. Right. I just call it mixing in the run. You could still run you could still pass the ball 65% in the first half or 60%, but don't ignore if Jordan Howard is added back from the practice squad. He reverted to the practice squad on Monday. Don't ignore the backs. Their line absolutely dominated. And sure, they had the offensive linemen had fun. You could just see it, watch the coaching tape. They were getting off the football, but use your pass targets. Use another one, Dallas Goedert. The Chargers have had like 5 bad games against tight ends. You know what? Go ahead and guess Dallas Goedert, who's coming off 2 monster games, averaging what Mosher said on our show that we did today, 50 yards per catch. Then guess what? There's a blueprint. Get this guy the football.
Adam, it's a marathon, not a sprint. If you run the ball and it's successful a couple of weeks in a row, that should open up your ability to do what you want to do more somewhere down the line, which is pass the ball. And I love that you brought up Goddard, because without Ertz, he has really opened up and become a much bigger part, a much bigger play guy in this offense. And then, of course, you have Jalen Hurts and the role that they're going to ask him to play this week against a secondary that plays a lot of zone this week. So, hey, Jalen Hurts, can you just pitch and catch and let your playmakers make the plays?
Yeah, they mix their coverages up. They'll disguise. Brandon Staley, defense coordinator, comes from the Vic Fangio school. That's his mentor. We work with the Bears and then the Broncos before he became the head coach of the Chargers. So they'll do some things to throw Hurts off. Yeah, you can expect that, like most teams are doing against him. I'm interested to see what their coverage will be. And we just talked about Goddard. Then consequently, what the Eagles' coverages will be defensively against that Charger receiver corps, which is one of the best in the National Football League.
We're talking with Adam Kaplan, Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. They didn't just run the ball with success last week, Adam. They tweaked their defense a little bit. We saw them, dominate up front. 6 sacks. What were some of the things they did defensively that maybe they tweaked a little bit that might carry over, the rest of this season?
A couple things. They're playing a little bit more man coverage. Now, the Eagles still are playing the most zone coverage in the National Football League by far. But they're still – the last, I'd say, 3 weeks, they're doing a little bit more man coverage. And here's the big thing. They're using more disguise. We've asked for this. We saw it in training camp. We saw it in week 1, and then it seemed to go away for 5 weeks. And then Gannon, he didn't do it against the Raiders, but he sure as heck did it last Sunday. Jared Goff held on to the ball just like Matt Ryan did, and it sure worked. And that led, when you make the quarterback hold on the football, you're going to get pressure on him, and they got the Goff, as you said. This quarterback here is this quarterback's pretty athletic. It won't be easy, but you have to disguise, make him hold on the football a little bit.
Yeah, 6 sacks last week, Adam, 12 quarterback hits. Goff had a rough day at the office, and one of the reasons is Atlanta doesn't either, but Detroit does not have a very good offensive line. How is the Chargers' offensive line? Are they equipped against this Eagles, active group up front? Sweat looks like he's kind of hitting his stride. Milton Williams got the game ball. They've added snaps to his ledger. We know Hargrave has had a really good season. Even Barnett got to the quarterback last week. So what's that matchup look like?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Mike, with that matchup, the big thing to me is the right side of the Chargers offensive line, which is weak. They're starting 2 backups. Schofield, the guard, right tackle Storm Norton, one of my favorite names in the NFL, against Josh Sweat and the left side and Hargrave. They have a distinct advantage, and they've got to take care of it. And that's where they could win and make Justin Herbert get rid of the football. That is absolutely 1,000% the key to this game. If they do not get pressure on that side, they're going to lose. And they're going to give up 30 points or more. If they pressure off the right side, this could be a very interesting game. And by the way, weather in the low 50s, very little wind. So you don't have to worry about weather this time of year. You start worrying about that with wind in November, but you don't have to worry about that at the Link on Sunday.
Adam, one area too, you talk about disguising the coverages and doing some things with your secondary. Steve Nelson, Slay, they got maybe the best group of guys that they've seen all year, if not for a while anyway. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, both physical guys. Guyton's a burner, so they're going to be challenged. How does John Gannon utilize his corners this week against those, against the Chargers wideouts?
Here's the question, and I know this is what a lot of people, they actually asked me this on Twitter, what I think is going to happen. It's hard to know that 1,000%, but because the Eagles play so little man coverage, you could play zone, but the problem is when you play zone, then you start attacking Steve Nelson, because you talked about him. The Chargers historically, and it's the same thing this year, they have the tallest pass targets in the league. They don't have a receivers under 6'1". The Chargers have a tight end, Donald Parham Jr., 6'8". I saw him dominate in training camp when I was there for 2 days in L.A. I do worry about the Eagles' corners. Maddox at 5'9", Nelson at 5'10", Slay's 6 foot. So the question is, do they play a little bit more man coverage? Do they have them? Do they play man sides? Do they travel? With Slay on Mike Williams last year, Darius Slay struggled against Metcalf, who's a big receiver. The matchups aren't very good for the Eagles. That, to me, is where the Chargers can make their money in this game. So I do worry about it. It's a very good question. I can't answer that because I don't know. Nobody knows what the right way to do it is. Any way they do it, the Chargers are going to take advantage of the matchups. But to me, I personally would play a little bit more man and put Slay on Mike Williams because they will go deep. Now, what I don't want them to do is start playing that bad defense again where the safeties are in the next county and giving up all those in breakers because that's what Keenan Allen will kill them if they do that.
Yeah, and then, of course, it's not last week, Atlanta had a very good tight end, and typically they throw the ball to the backs out of their backfield. They don't have great outside guys. This team has good outside guys, but they also have Eckler, who's a handful, and Jared Cook, who's a very athletic tight end. The Eagles made a tweak at linebacker. They released Eric Wilson this week. They're going to go with TJ Edwards, and who is really going to be that next guy? Is that going to be Davion Taylor getting most of the snaps as the second guy?
Yeah, so what we reported 2 weeks ago wound up happening. So they were going to I think prior to last week's game, we had said on our pregame show that what we're hearing is Wilson will either be inactive or play very little. They're going to go towards TJ Edwards, Davion Taylor. They want to get a look at Taylor. They're not punting on the season. They still have a very good shot at the wild card. Got to start winning at home at 0-3. But they want to take a look at Davion Taylor. He can be a very big liability in coverage. He's not there yet. What I'm told is it's his eye discipline. He doesn't have a good eye discipline. His eyes aren't always in the right place. So this is a problem. I'm sure that Joe Lombardi, the offensive coordinator, grandson of the late, great Vince Lombardi, will know this, watching the coaching tape. So they'll go after him. So I think that's kind of what the game plan will be for the Chargers. You have the two linebackers. The Eagles are a nickel defense. They don't play a lot of base. So you see it. Those are the two linebackers. The only two linebackers are going to play a lot. Now, Singleton, the Eagles would argue that Singleton still will be in there. He will. We also said 2 weeks ago that Singleton could be a guy you won't see playing as much. And you saw he got one more snap than every other linebacker. And we said prior to last week's game, he's probably not going to see as much time. But his roles, we weren't totally sure about his role. And very clear, he's only playing in passing situations. And he's playing on special teams where he's really, really good. Oh, I don't see Mike. I don't see him.